Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Rewire Your Food-Addicted Brain. Fight cravings and break free from a high-sugar, ultra-processed diet using Neuroscience by Claire Wilcox, M.D. Foreword by Vera Tarman, Clarissa Kennedy, and Molly Painshaub. Narrated by Christina Delaine. Publisher's Note: this audio edition references worksheets that can be downloaded at newharbinger.com/54681. Disclaimer: this publication is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is sold with the understanding that the publisher is not engaged in rendering psychological, financial, legal, or other professional services. If expert assistance or counseling is needed, the services of a competent professional should be sought. Foreword. As hosts of the Food Junkies podcast, it is a true honor to introduce this groundbreaking book by Dr. Wilcox. Our podcast has been a labor of love, dedicated to exploring the complex and often misunderstood world of food addiction. Through our interviews and discussions, we've aimed to offer hope, support, and practical insights to those struggling with this challenging condition. When Dr. Wilcox approached us with the idea of using our podcast as a foundation for this comprehensive guide, we were immediately excited by the potential impact it could have on the lives of our listeners and beyond. For years, we have poured our efforts into raising awareness about ultra-processed food addiction. We have interviewed leading experts, shared compelling personal stories, and delved into cutting-edge research, all with the goal of helping people understand this multifaceted issue. This book takes that mission a step further, transforming the wealth of knowledge we've accumulated into a resource that is both accessible and deeply rooted in science. It is a reflection of the conversations and revelations we've shared on the podcast, but now in a format that can be easily referenced and revisited. What makes this book particularly special is its ability to bridge the often intimidating gap between academic research and real-world application. Dr. Wilcox has skillfully taken insights from our podcast guests, current scientific literature, and proven recovery strategies to create a guide that not only explains the neurobiology of food addiction, but also provides a practical roadmap for those seeking to overcome it. This book doesn't just inform, it empowers listeners to take control of their relationship with food, offering both education and actionable steps for sustainable recovery. We strongly support incorporating nutrition-focused treatments into recovery programs, as nourishing both the brain and body is essential for true healing. Many people who seek support within traditional eating disorder frameworks often find their symptoms worsening, underscoring the need for a more tailored approach. By fostering collaboration between eating disorder and food addiction professionals, we can build a unified, compassionate approach that better supports recovery and promotes a healthier, stigma-free society. Our mission is to also raise awareness about ultra-processed food addiction in the deeper hope of breaking down the stigma surrounding all forms of addiction. Many of us experience challenges with these highly engineered foods, and recognizing this universal struggle can foster empathy and understanding toward those facing other forms of addiction. For those who feel alone in their struggle, acknowledging food addiction can be a first step toward reducing shame and seeking support without fear of judgment. We believe this book will become an essential resource for anyone touched by ultra-processed food addiction, whether personally or professionally. Its comprehensive yet approachable style ensures that listeners will find it both enlightening and applicable to their own lives. We are truly honored to have played a role in its creation through our podcast, and we are excited to see the transformative power it will have on the journey to recovery. Vera Tarman, Clarissa Kennedy, and Molly Painshaub, hosts of the Food Junkies podcast. Introduction. Willfully addictive, hyper-palatable junk foods are engineered toxins. David Katz, Food Junkies Podcast. Most of the food products that flood our grocery shelves today are processed to the hilt, designed by Big Food to make us want more and more. Instead of selling foods in their natural form, the food industry crafts their products with the goal of creating addiction in mind. The end result? We get hooked, developing intense cravings and deeply entrenched, unhelpful habits around certain foods. If you're one of these people, this book will show you a path toward freeing yourself. The global increase in chronic conditions like diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and obesity can be traced back to the food industry and a lack of regulation to curb its undue influence. In the 1960s, Big Food began engineering their products to enhance taste. The more rewarding the product, the more people craved, and the more they kept buying it. Simple economics. People started to gain weight, and the problem fed itself. Michael Moss, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter and author of Hooked, appeared on the Food Junkies podcast to discuss what happens behind the scenes in the food industry. He described how scientists and engineers in industry laboratories design their products to enhance qualities like craveability, bliss point, and vanishing caloric density, which refers to how ultra-processed foods are crafted to dissolve in your mouth so fast that your brain doesn't realize it ate anything at all. Ultra-processed food, Moss says, is in many ways the new tobacco, and many of these food products are even more problematic and more addictive than even some of the harsher, addictive drugs. The new tobacco indeed. In the 1980s, tobacco company R.J. Reynolds purchased Nabisco, then sold it to Philip Morris, which also bought General Foods and Kraft, thus becoming the single largest manufacturer of processed food in North America. Big Tobacco became Big Food. To make things worse, the food industry has meddled behind the scenes, funding biased academic research and influencing medical and nutritionist education to downplay the numerous negative health consequences of sugar and ultra-processed foods. The public continues to be misled. Much of food advertising targets children, who give a lifetime of profit potential. Food industry giants now own Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, and Slim Fast, which tout ineffective calorie reduction models and dress up ultra-processed foods as healthy and market them. Screens, television, computers, smartphones are used to condition our behavior and feed our need for their products. The problem. Thanks to a growing body of research, it's now nearly impossible to refute. High-sugar, ultra-processed foods are addictive. Just like nicotine, alcohol, and other drugs of abuse, they light up our reward centers and create troughs in our brain. In those of us who are susceptible, either due to genetics, overexposure to sugary ultra-processed foods at a young age, trauma, or other factors outside of our control, these foods, over time, have rewired our brains, driving them to prefer the factory-made food that many of us instinctively find hyperpalatable. The core symptoms of food addiction are cravings, obsessions, and compulsions to overeat foods that are heavily processed and/or contain a lot of sugar. If you have out-of-control cravings, a tendency to eat certain processed foods to excess, or negative health and emotional consequences from your eating patterns, and find that despite multiple attempts to change, the obsessions and compulsions to return to old eating behaviors just keep coming back, it's possible you have food addiction. I certainly believe I do. Those of us who are in the throes of food addiction battle constant urges to eat. The obsession wears us down. Then, in a moment of weakness, we are seduced back into a behavior we were trying to avoid, undermining our most wholesome intentions for ourselves. Yo-yo dieting, Weight fluctuations and poor mental and physical health are the inevitable result. We blame ourselves, believing that it's a problem rooted in our own deficient willpower. Those around us, our friends, family, and doctors, do little to counter these toxic beliefs, and our self-esteem plummets further. We think that we just need to eat less and exercise more, and just break away from our microwaves, computers, and TV screens. We try to change, and we do it over and over, but our commitments never seem to last. We suffer in silence, demoralized and despondent. The solution. The good news is that because we now know that food addiction is a biological problem, rooted in our brain and caused by a substance that exists outside of ourselves, there's a workable, biologically based solution to get free that's rooted in neuroscience. You can rewire your brain back to health. It also means if you have food addiction, it's not your fault. First, you will learn how cutting back on the foods that have caused you problems in the first place, namely high-sugar, ultra-processed foods, is a key part of the solution, as it will restore the brain chemistry that was disrupted by these foods in the first place. Your brain has been made sick by these foods. By avoiding them, your brain's sensitivity to food cues, stress resilience, and impulse control will normalize, given time. I'll teach you where and how to draw the line between problem foods and non-problem foods, and how to do it for you as an individual, as we are all different. You'll also learn additional ways to rewire your brain in a sustainable way so that you can stop and stay stopped, using nutritional, emotional, medical, pharmacological, self-help, spiritual, and psychological tools from eating disorder and addiction models of care. This is key, since, as anyone with an addiction will maintain, knowledge and willpower are not enough. For example, you will learn what and how to eat. You'll find out that eating enough delicious, nutritious food is an essential component of restoring your brain's health. You'll get to develop a food plan that works for you, weigh the pros and cons of an abstinence-based approach, and understand important nutritional changes. We'll explore many additional skills and solutions which can heal the brain in intentional ways. You'll find out how to build community, rid your environments of food cues, practice self-care, seek therapeutic help, find meaning, consider individualized treatment, and more. Finally, sometimes people with addictions need supplemental treatment, medication for craving reduction, or treatments for mental health, eating disorders, or other emotional issues. If your case is more complex, the website for this book, newharbinger.com/54681, has bonus chapters that can guide you through navigating comorbid eating disorders and how to access professional help. Foundations of this approach. The content of this book comes from two primary sources. First, the textbook Food Addiction, Obesity and Disorders of Overeating, an evidence-based assessment and clinical guide, authored and published in 2021 by this book's author, will be frequently referenced. It is an extensively cited work rooted firmly in the academic literature and evidence-based. It compiles thousands of research studies that firmly establish that food addiction is a real and useful entity. Second, and perhaps much more importantly, this book is deeply informed and inspired by the Food Junkies podcast, hosted by three women: Vera Tarman, addiction physician and author of the 2019 book Food Junkies, Recovery from Food Addiction, an essential and groundbreaking book on food addiction recovery, already in its second edition, and Clarissa Kennedy and Molly Painshop, licensed mental health and addiction clinicians and founders of Sweet Sobriety, a highly successful online treatment program for food addiction. This book draws direct insight from the many food addiction-oriented professionals that have been interviewed on this show, and by doing so presents a consensus, not a personal opinion. Although food addiction is not yet an official diagnosis, behavioral health and healthcare providers, researchers, investigative reports, historians, nutritionists, eating disorder and addiction specialists, and more have been working and refining their process in the field for decades and are coming to a consensus about the best ways to help people like you get well. The desired outcome. My hope is that if you have food addiction and apply these solutions, you'll benefit in many of the same ways that I and many others with food addiction have experienced. My hope is that you too will find release from the insatiable cravings, constant urges, obsessions, and compulsions to eat high sugar and ultra-processed food to excess. By applying the solutions and skills you are about to learn, you can start eating in a more balanced way and habitually make better food choices, ending the binging cycle and the constant exhaustive battle with yourself. You may experience mood improvements as well as better concentration and memory, reduced body pain, and enhanced physical health, vitality, and well-being. As you'll learn more about in Chapter 7, I do not encourage people to make weight loss a primary goal because it can be triggering for many with food addiction. Restrictive eating causes more rebound binging, but weight release usually occurs as a result of food addiction recovery. So those of you who want to release weight for health reasons can look forward to that too. In sum, if all goes well, you'll be done with the misery and happier and more confident than ever. What makes this book entirely unique from existing, established solutions is that it is rooted in neuroscience and addresses the problem at its source. It is not a Band-Aid approach. For those with food addiction, the brain circuitry that drives addictive behavior, including circuits underlying reward, motivation, impulse control, emotion regulation, and habit formation, has been rewired by sugar and ultra-processed foods. The secret to success is nurturing these circuits back to health. You will soon learn how to do exactly that. Part 1. The Science of Food Addiction. Chapter 1. Is food really addictive? We have so much evidence that sugar is harmful to health and addictive that the naysayer's voice has been pretty minimized at this point. Nicole Avena, Food Junkies Podcast. Maybe it sounds extreme to talk about food as addictive. After all, we have to eat to live, right? And food doesn't make us slur our words, intoxicate us, or cause blackouts, so how can it be grouped in the same category as alcohol and other addictive drugs? We don't go through withdrawal when we stop, do we? Issues with food don't render us penniless, alone, and unrecognizable in the same way that heroin or meth addictions can, right? Or could they? In this chapter, I will address these questions and more, and by the end, I hope you'll be at least open to the idea that some foods are as addictive and problematic as many of the other substances we find it so easy to brand with that label. First, you'll learn what addiction is. Then you'll learn that some foods, namely high sugar and ultra-processed food, are more addictive than others, triggering harmful mechanisms in the same way that other addictive substances do, by causing changes in neural circuits that mediate reward, motivation, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Next, I'll teach you about the ways that overexposure to these foods can negatively affect your mental and physical health, including unwanted weight gain and eating disorders. What is addiction? The word addiction is used pretty freely. What does it actually mean? One thing it doesn't mean: enjoyment. That you enjoy eating cookies does not mean at all that you are addicted. Rather, addiction centers around a core problem: loss of control. If you've been addicted to something before, you know what it's like. The obsessive thoughts sneak through the back door of your consciousness while you're guarding the front, leaving their mean-spirited gifts in the form of justifications. These shifts in perspective can be sudden. Out of nowhere, it seems like a spectacular idea to use the substance that minutes ago you were convinced was ruining your life. If it's progressed significantly, you still use the substance despite looming disasters and tangible negative consequences. It has taken control of you. Here are some other descriptions of addiction from a wide range of experts in the field. A repetitive behavior that some people find difficult to quit. Engaging in a reward-driven behavior that's harming them. Doing something that you know is wrong but you can't stop yourself. A zombie walk, an unconscious monster, and the toddler in the head. Vera Tarman of Food Junkies also calls it a multiple personality disorder of behavior. All these descriptions also evoke the core theme of loss of control. When neuroscientists and researchers use the term addiction, they too are often referring to a loss of control, one that results from brain changes due to repeated consumption of an addictive substance or performance of an addictive behavior. How does this loss of control develop? When we use a substance that makes us feel good in some way, our brain unconsciously learns that it wants more of that substance and pushes us toward consuming the substance again. The more we use and experience benefit from the substance, the more we want to return to it for a similar effect. This learning process is called associative learning, and it occurs as a result of a well-mapped-out biological process called conditioning, which causes animals and humans to develop habits. Once conditioning has occurred, many visual, oral, olfactory, smell, and gustatory, taste, memory cues can unconsciously trigger a desire and/or behaviors to seek out and consume a substance. In this way, places we've used a substance before, a bar, seeing items associated with it, beer can, or being exposed to a little bit of it, a taste, can make us want more and more. Similarly, negative mood states that have been previously relieved by substance use will also trigger a similar habitual behavioral response, as can stress. Cues can be environmental, outside of ourselves, like a place or a date, or interoceptive, inside of ourselves, like an emotion or a memory. Excess substance use, be it drugs, alcohol, nicotine, or sugar-laden processed food, will also affect our impulse control in a more general sense, directly affecting our attention and concentration. Our vulnerability to these kinds of cues can last long past our last use of the substance, even months or years, although it does diminish over time. The good news, though, is that there are many ways to rewire things back and to hasten the brain's healing. You'll learn all about them in great detail in Part 2. Is food addictive? Do you know anyone who's cheated on a diet, rationalized an extra piece of cake when they were trying to be good, told themselves just tonight, and then went back the next day to the eating behavior they were trying to stop? It's likely that most people, with an honest appraisal of themselves, would say they've experienced loss of control of their eating at some point or another. For those of us with food addiction, our symptoms are usually more extreme. Sometimes, just a taste of a trigger food, or a food that we are particularly vulnerable to overeating, leads to a rampage of feasting. Down goes the whole tub of ice cream or a large box of chocolates. In food addiction, the cravings and ingrained habits can become so extreme that they lead to serious, devastating consequences. For us, the loss of control around food can be just as profound as it is for someone with a drug or alcohol problem. Jonathan Cranford, author of The Sugar Demons, An Addict's Guide to Conquering Sugar Addiction, knew he was one of these people when he found himself staring into my kitchen trash can, looking at 2 empty pints of ice cream. I was about to cover them with other trash inside the trash can to hide it and stuff it toward the bottom. I realized in that moment that this isn't normal. Why are you hiding this from your wife and daughter who don't even care? This isn't what a normal grown man does when he wants to eat ice cream. He doesn't hide his tracks. Cranford's behavior is eerily similar to what is commonly described by people with other addictions, be it nicotine, alcohol, or heroin. His brain has been conditioned to go into autopilot. His case is extreme, but at some level, do you relate? If so, you might have a food addiction too. High-sugar, ultra-processed foods are especially addictive. The United States didn't always have a problem with addictive eating. It wasn't until the 1960s that Americans began to consume more calories and average body weights began to increase. Then, in 1997, obesity was declared a global epidemic by the World Health Organization, and today it continues to grow increasingly prevalent. Over 40% of adults are now considered obese, according to a 2018 study. Studies claim that over 1/5 of deaths in the U.S. are attributable to it, with rates similar to or bypassing smoking, and obesity is the cause of 10% of the national medical budget, or more than $170 billion a year. Why have these last decades seen such a significant rise in average body weights? In the early part of the 1900s, we were still eating primarily whole foods from our gardens or directly from animals on our farms. But in the 1960s, ultra-processed foods with high levels of refined carbohydrates, often combined with fat and sugar, flooded our market. These foods are especially addictive. What are these high-sugar, ultra-processed foods I keep referring to? In Chapter 2, I'll go into great detail about which foods are addictive and the studies that support this claim. But broadly, this refers to most of the food that's on our grocery store shelves, unfortunately. It's food that has been heavily flavored with additives and emulsifiers, produced in mass quantities in laboratories, and extensively marketed by the food industry. It's usually high in energy density, sodium, sugar, fat, and refined carbohydrates. It has many ingredients, as opposed to a few, fewer favorable micronutrient profiles, micronutrients being vitamins and minerals, and macronutrient ratios, that is, ratios of carbohydrates, fat, and protein, that are nothing like what is seen in foods in their natural states. High sugar, in particular, means processed foods with added sugar, for which sugar, or one of its many other names, is in the top 4 listed ingredients. And why is such food so addictive? Our brains evolved during times of scarcity, in sharp contrast to our present era, when food only minimally activated the reward network. Brains that were more sensitive to food cues and were motivated to consume high-calorie foods when they were available were evolutionarily advantageous. These prehistoric systems are still in our brains, and in today's food environment, the lights in them are going on and off like a pinball machine. One highly convincing, tightly controlled study in humans found that diets high in ultra-processed food caused 500 calories more a day of food intake over 2 weeks than those low in ultra-processed food. When the same participants were switched to the opposite experimental group for an additional 2 weeks, the same finding was seen. Those who got ultra-processed food took in more. This convincing work lends strong support to arguments that ultra-processed foods are largely responsible for the increasing average body weights in industrialized countries. Ashley Gearhart, a leading food addiction researcher, addressed the question of food's addictiveness by taking criteria from those used in 1988 by the Surgeon General to determine that nicotine was addictive, and adding a fourth, craving. She concluded that ultra-processed food is addictive. It can cause compulsive use, has mood-altering effects, reinforces behavior, and triggers strong urges or craving. If we accept that nicotine is addictive, we must accept that ultra-processed food is addictive too. True enough, thousands of studies in animal models and human populations show that high sugar and ultra-processed foods act on the brain like opioids and other drugs of abuse. They cause changes at the cellular and brain circuit level, which lead individuals to develop a strong preference for them via conditioning. Foods in their more natural forms do not.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?